Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to our lesson number 7 Q&A Zoom meeting here. And we are going to take a peek at the assignment and then take a look at any questions anybody might have. So let us just review the assignment. Would be a good first step here. Right. Okay, just got to get a few things sorted out here. There we go. Okay, so our lesson number 7 assignment has 2 different parts to it, and the first is the local ecological survey, and then the second is going to be the site cross section. So let us take a peek at both of those. And local ecological survey is pretty straightforward. I can bring up. It's actually one of the parts of the course here that we have been considering some changes for. Trying to cut down on a little bit of the load for people. There we go. So yeah, what we're trying to sort of highlight here is ecological succession, and this is actually a really interesting tool to utilize on a design site. And when you sort of get the hang of it, it's the sort of thing that just walking onto a project site, say for an initial visit, and observing the condition of the site and some of the vegetation can give you a huge insight into what's going on, whether there's been disturbance. And whenever it is pretty amazing that nature has these tools built into it, but when there is disturbance within an ecological system, there is typically a mechanism in place to repair it. Now, there's exceptions to that. And I guess it's a bit of a sliding scale. When we get into more of a brittle environment, so one that has very little rainfall and has very little opportunity to recover, so say more desert situation, disturbance may not have a quick, well, it may not appear to be responding quickly because of the limited moisture available. But we go to the other end of the spectrum when we're on a coastal, Pacific Northwest coastal forest, and there's disturbance. There is a pretty quick response. And we've certainly seen that on our property. We've been here 28 years, and we saw large sections of our property go from pasture that was cut regularly, and it's transitioned into alder forests and some Douglas fir forests. So we're allowing it to recover. We don't really want as much pasture as we have here. So it's been fascinating to watch. Now, with that, you also can certainly get some invasives coming in, like we have. We definitely have some Himalayan blackberry, that sort of thing. So again, it's very interesting to see. And a lot of the driving force to all of this is actually within the soil, things you can't really see. And why I say that is, if we look at this picture on the screen, and I'll just get my drawing tool going here. If we look at this situation where we'll assume we used to have a forest and it has been disturbed, and then we start to get a little bit of regrowth. That's all based on what's going on in the soil. So when we get to a mature late succession forest, the soil organisms tend to be very fungal in nature, so that it leans very heavily on that side. And when that canopy is removed and more disturbance is created in the soil, those fungal organisms tend to either die or go into sort of a stasis where they're awaiting better conditions. So you get more of a bacterial dominant soil, and those are associated with, weeds. When I say weeds, I mean annual weeds. The sort of early responses you would think about, some grasses, really these pioneer plants that tend to help rebuild conditions that, again, have been disturbed. And I'm sure way back in the day, typically when we had disturbance in a forest, it might be a tree or two coming down, or it might be a storm that's damaged an area. Wouldn't typically be the large swaths of land that we can see today, especially in agricultural zones where they used to be forest and now they're heavily cultivated areas, and they keep them in that low succession. And that's where annual vegetables want to be. They want to be in sort of a somewhat of a 1-to-1 ratio. So a little bit of fungal and a little bit of bacterial organisms. But again, I don't want to go on too long about this, but this is a very interesting process to learn about and to observe. So again, when you're on a project site, perhaps the one you're working on right now, you may see parts or multiple successions on the property. If I walked onto my land, I would see some mature forest, and I would see some very early disturbance. So one thing that's really helpful with that is if you do see early disturbance or early succession, that's where some management comes into play. So, and or labor, right? So we want to be able to help that area along, to push it in whatever direction we're going. And often that means managing some of the invasives that come with it. So that's the big part of this assignment, is just identifying if you see any of these successions within your project site. And there is a helpful little example here in the template file showing a semi-arid spot. And that might be helpful for Hannah because you are definitely in a drier location. So yeah, take a look at that. And again, this really has a lot to do with what's going on underground. And we don't really get into that with the course here, but if you look up if we look here, yeah, there's a good drawing. So this is what I'm talking about. So this early succession here, it's talking about the amount of bacteria and the amount of fungal activity. And this would be micrograms, and we don't really have to get into that at all. But you can see as the soils improve, the fungal content goes up. And when we get into balance, that's the sweet spot for a lot of annual vegetables. And then when we get into the latter succession, it's very heavy on the fungal end. And that's part of the reason why in a mature forest, you don't see blackberry, you don't see annual weeds growing. If you tried to grow even lettuce or something like that in the understory of a forest, you'd have a hard time. It's just there's the wrong sort of soil organisms. So this is a big part of that, and it sort of leads from our last assignment where we're looking at soils, but that's one thing we didn't look at is the soil food web, and I would totally encourage all of you to explore that, whether it's through Dr. Lane Ingham's website here or what have you. This is a very interesting process, and the reality is we need all of these organisms to be in place for nutrient cycling to go on. So without these predators feeding on these microorganisms, we wouldn't have plant available nutrition. So if we just add compost, you'd think, wow, that compost has done a great job. It's actually not so much the compost, but what's alive within it. Yeah, so again, it's a very interesting part of the exercise here to take a look at. And then we get into what I consider a little, it's not silly, but this can be a little bit time consuming going through these bird species and the local food chain. And, you know, that is interesting stuff. Do I do this on a design site? No, I don't. And I don't draft this up either, but we're definitely, this is all part of site observation. What's that site look like? So if we're in an urban area, you know, we know we're in these early succession spots because there was once forest there and now there isn't. And then when you get into more rural acreage settings, you do definitely get later succession happening in that as well. So again, this is a really good thing to know. And then if you also are looking at your pioneer plants for your area, and those can be surprising. Believe it or not, on the coast here, Douglas fir is a pioneer plant. And I would never have thought that. But things like bracken, and there are all sorts of other pioneers, but just knowing those is really helpful. If you go on to a project site and you spot them, you know that there is recovery going on. So yeah, that's about it. And then a SWOT analysis here. So that's pretty straightforward, I think. Does anybody have any questions about that at all? No? Okay. And you can certainly put it in the chat if you like, or unmute yourself if you have any question at any time. Yeah, the hard part, well, what I would consider the harder part of the lesson is when we get into the site cross section. So I'll show you a couple examples of section maps that we have done. And fortunately for us, our software will do all this hard work for us. We don't have to go through and do some of the manual work that you guys are being asked to do here. But these are really helpful to learn, to know how to do, just so that you can sort of pull yourself away from that 2D overhead view. Let's see if we've got an example here. So if our project site looks like this, you know, after a while, you do get a feel for what this might look like in on the real world. But ideally, what we want to do is get a feel of what it's like on the ground in that specific location. So again, this is a great example here of a section drawing. of an area that doesn't have much elevation change, but it still gives us a really good feel for, if we're standing in that location, what it would look like. Yeah, so the thing here is we want to get our base plan and decide where we want to sort of put that slice into the landscape. So that's kind of literally what we're doing. We're cutting into the landscape and flipping it on edge. And this is an important part to include, the designating, identifying each end of the line. So it could be A, B, it doesn't really matter what you put here. But what that helps us with is when we get to that second part, we know what side of the line we're standing on and looking at the landscape. Because otherwise, we wouldn't. You'd have to work a little bit to figure that out. So with that at the bottom, it makes it very easy for us to figure that out. And then, yeah, this is a great example. Up in the top left is a little, very small version of the base plan with the A to B, and then some images along the top here. And this is sort of a gentle rise in the middle of the this portion of the project site. And often that's where the house would be located. As well, there's succession and microclimates listed here, and I'm not absolutely sure what you're asked to do here now. We'd have to look at that exercise. So we want, it says here, we want the microclimate for that section listed below. So you don't have to worry about the succession, but just place a microclimate in along the bottom. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, the tricky part may be on how to determine the grade here. So there's a couple of ways to do that. And let me see if there's anything put in the, there are some resources here. So the how to make a section drawing, and that would be worth going through on your own to just take a look. If you have contour data, which I think all of you do, there is a process you can walk through to figure that out. Now, one of the easy ways to do it is using Google Earth, and I'll just show you how to do that. I'm going to start Google Earth here. Yeah, so I'll have to give it a few moments. I got a lot of things loaded on it, so we'll just let that load up. And yeah, we'll walk through that, because on a small site, this is not going to be that difficult, right? So a lot of urban sites that just have a little bit of elevation change, you can calculate that pretty easy. On a larger site, that may be a little bit trickier. So Google Earth can certainly help with that. All right. I'm just going to stop share and just wait 2 seconds here for Google Earth to get going. Yeah, it's a very useful tool. We don't design on Google Earth, but we definitely use it to communicate some ideas. All right, so there we go. And I think what I'll do, yeah, I think I'll just share my whole desktop here. Okay, So there's things on the outer edge you might want to ignore, but let's just zoom in here. And we'll take any property. There we go. Zoom in on this one here. We'll pretend this is our project site. So the easiest way to do this is, I believe, I don't do this very often, but we're going to draw a path. So that's this button up here. And let's say I have decided it would be best to draw a section from the road here all the way to the back. So we can move this around if we don't get it right. And once we have it where we want it, you'll notice over on the side here, there's a dialog box, and we'll just say okay. And then what we'll notice is that that line is at the bottom of this places section here. And if I right click that, I can get what's called show elevation profile. So that's pretty cool. It will tell me the elevations based on that line. So, and also the nice thing is, while I'm taking my cursor along the line, it also runs it along the above line. So you can see the house is on a flat spot here, and then the property drops off. So that is, you know, no doubt the easiest way to get that information. I wouldn't do this for a client. It's great for the course here because it's very accessible. Now, the reason I wouldn't use it on a project is it's just not that accurate, right? Google Earth is just not great when it comes to elevation data, but we'll make do with it here. And so what I would do is actually just take a screenshot of this, which we can do right now. We can just do a screenshot of this graph. And then you can take that, and it's probably best to trace it, right? And then place your landscape features above it. So we would have the house that we could depict here. We'd have a bunch of vegetation that we depict here. And again, you can move your cursor. Let's say, you know, you have some vegetation at the back. So right about here is where the trees start. The same with the front. You can just go along, and that's about where the trees are, and that's where they end. So that's sort of a quick and easy way to depict this. And what I will do, has anybody got any questions about that? Or, I mean, that to me is about the easiest way to do this. Again, you can, if we stop share and we go back to the assignment. Again, there are some resources here. So there's a couple of videos on how to do a section drawing without using Google Earth. And you'd have to have topographic information, which I think everybody does. So that's another option. And then, of course, if we're trying to figure out the height of trees, there's a few methods to doing that. So those are good skills to know for sure. And then you can see The first part of the assignment's worth 4 points and the second's worth 10. So, obviously the cross-section map's going to take a little bit more time and energy and emphasis on that. And then we have our rubric. So just make sure that you're including what's asked for here. So some of the things people leave out is they won't label height. So we want to do that. Label the height of elements and their relationship to the ground. So that could be the house. It could be any foliage that's there or any other outbuildings. Yeah, and that's it. I don't think it's there's too much more to go over. You can use this sort of template. So the other thing to consider is the scale. And what we want to do is have this at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we go back here, there's a mention about that right here. So what that does is that gives us the proper proportion and we're able to look at it, and that would be as we would see it. If you're on a very large site and you want to do a section drawing of a big area, say a couple thousand feet, what'll end up happening is you're going to have the grade of your landscape will look proper, but then all of your landscape elements will look very, very small. So it would be hard to articulate graphically. So I would not, do a huge swath. I would try and keep it under a couple 100 feet if you can, if you're on larger property there. Yeah, so that's an important one, is keeping that scale at 1-to-1. Certainly with engineering drawings that we've done commercial landscape work, and that requires kind of coordinating with other consultants. Often civil engineers will use a different ratio. So they'll accentuate the vertical and decrease the length of the horizontal, just so that the contractors can clearly see the way they want the site graded. But other than that, in the landscape world, we want to see it as a 1-to-1. So let me show you a couple examples of what we have done in the past. And again, we don't do too many of these, mainly because when, like right now, we're doing a project, and I'll even fire it up here and we'll look at it in a bit. Mainly because when we work in 3D a lot, so we don't have to sit ourselves into a section to depict what the site's going to look like. We can place ourselves anywhere within the landscape that we want and get a clear picture of what that looks like. So this is now saying that, whenever we do commercial landscape design, it's a requirement to do a section. And this site here is one we did quite a while ago. Gosh, it must be at least 10 years ago. It could be longer. And it was a 5-acre site, and the district that was going to be approving, just one second here. Just loading up a file. There we go. The district that was approving this development permit or building permit, they want to see what the landscape's going to look like from the road. So we drew a section from the roadway, and we were able to we had a 3D model of the site, and we were able to place buildings. This is a proposed building that our client was hoping to build. This right here. So we plopped that in. There was a big parking area that you don't see, and there's all this vegetation going up the road. So this is often the case. You have to have so many trees per linear foot, and we were, complying with that because they want this development to be softened from the road. And so we were showing that. And then this right here is the grade of the road going up. And you'll notice there's no labels other than the scale and a label at the top here, but we don't have any heights or descriptions or anything, mainly because this is part of a bigger package. And I'll just show you that, and then we'll just take a peek at a job that we're currently working on. So yeah, this is the same site, and this is part of their design package. So there is the building. Our section went right up the road here. So with the software we use, we can tell it that. We can draw a section line, and then it'll flip this up on edge. And this is a little bit boring stuff, but this is kind of what they want when we're looking at commercial work. It's so this band around the perimeter is this landscape area that's required, and this is what I was kind of alluding to. We can put ourselves wherever we want on the site, and we have property lines embedded. We have this landscape setback area identified, and then a bunch of images from different places. And then some details at the end here. So that's the only time we use this method of section drawing. So it's very helpful. Again, we don't really have to worry about it because of the software that we use. And I'm just gonna go to that right now to show you. This is the early stages of a landscape we're working on, and you can see we have topographic information. There's a building footprint here. So this is, I won't get into what this is all about, but this is basically a fenced growing area. That this is all very rocky, and we're putting a retaining wall at the bottom. So just to just to know whether this sort of thing is going to work, we can just make sure this is behaving itself here. We can flip this up on edge, and I can see the retaining wall, how it's working. There's a greenhouse here. There's some deer fencing, and I can spot any trouble areas that come up. There's access down below there. So, so in essence, we can take a shot of any particular location, and get a good idea of again whether it's going to work or not. So that's where we're at there. We're just in the access layer of this particular drawing. So that's, for us, that's retaining walls and any structure and walkways and patios. This area was recently kind of logged. It was chalked out. So they wanted to put something in there. And yeah, so one of the reasons why we do not do section drawings, because we can literally place ourselves wherever we want on the drawing, just to ensure that things are behaving themselves. So cool. And it's a lot harder than it looks to get all this stuff to cooperate, but very powerful tool when you want to know. Makes it a lot easier to know whether a 4-foot retaining wall or a 3-foot retaining wall is going to work, because you can, for me, I'm very visual. I need to see whether that's going to work or not. So yeah, that's just a little snapshot of the current workflow we're doing. Does anybody have any questions at all? Do you want to, I know I've got Hannah's drawing on presentation on my computer here. We could take a look at that. Is there anything you wanted to talk about with that, Hannah, or is it pretty clear?
Are you talking about my cross section?
Yeah. Do you need any feedback right now about that, or are you feeling pretty
Yeah,
comfortable?
it's not very far along,
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes. The other one's complete, but I just started that section,
Okay.
so you can certainly take a look at it. But
All right. Oh, I think we were there. All right. So you have chosen, just zoom in a little bit here. You've chosen top area, and you've given an example as to why. So you don't have a lot of elevation change there, so that, yeah, I'm trying to remember what your contour intervals are. Let's see here. Are they look
I'm
like
sorry.
they're 9 foot, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 9 feet elevation change.
Okay. So the only thing I would kind of throw out to you is just with this area here, you might want to try and get slightly higher resolution. I'm not sure if you can do that. Was this off of a local, or did you get your contour data from, um, say, a
Just
county?
Google Earth Pro. There wasn't any survey data that I could find.
Okay. Um, the contour creator, did you check that out at all, or?
Yes, yes, I got information from that,
Okay.
and yeah, that's
That's
on my base map.
that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go back to your base map here. Right. So if you can, you might want to, utilize the slightly higher resolution that you've got here.
Okay.
Three.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are, some are 3 and some are 2. So you might, that's another thing, like with the contour map creator, if we, um, when you are setting that up, let's just go there. Take, forget where you are located.
Silverthorne, Colorado.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right at the top here. Silverthorne. Cool. Yeah. So I think you are, is this you right here?
Yes.
Okay. So when you do set that up, um, you can go to your plot options, and you can have it as a set interval. So you could say, I want 2-foot contours, and that is what you will get. Let's just go in a bit here. Yeah, so I would try, and that would be the only thing I would recommend if you can, is trying to get even contour intervals. And the one reason I would say that's helpful is whenever you do that, you get these patterns that get developed, and it can be really helpful to have those if we do something different. So let's say we just let it do whatever. No, we're not going to do that. Let's say we're just asking it to do 10 different. Okay, that's not quite enough. Say we go 20. You get a very different feel for this area here. Maybe not very different, but somewhat different. So yeah, I would, if you can, might not be absolutely a necessity for your current assignment, but even having this data here would be, I think, a little bit better than the
The
one that
larger,
you've,
yeah.
yeah, just gives you more resolution, because otherwise you're just dealing with 2 points rather than, you know, what you've got here. And these are pretty evenly spaced, but not exact. So, yeah. And then it's, of course, just flipping that on edge, which can be a little bit tricky. But if you use the template file and you even follow this type of setup where you have a vertical and horizontal grid, that can make things a little bit easier if you're kind of navigating this by hand or you're trying to draw with one of the tools here. But yeah, that looks like you've got a good start. And some of the reasons, excellent. And the greatest area of use, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. The project site has a road heading through it. It's amazing how many properties that happens to. Do
Yeah.
you live here, Hannah? Is this
Yeah, I live on
your rest?
I rent part of the site.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And does the bottom of the property get much use, or is that sort of a, or does the road
Mm,
really dictate the usage down
The
here?
it's really sloped and it's right above the highway.
Hmm.
So it does not get any use.
Ah, I see. Right. But at least there's space back off of the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that looks great. No, I look forward to seeing that develop. Do you have any questions at all with that, or are you feeling pretty comfortable with the process of taking this? And
I think I feel pretty comfortable. I think you've
cool.
done a good job of explaining it.
Okay. Well, that is great. Um, Alrighty. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to go over outside of that lesson? I'm not sure if you've sort of looked ahead a little bit, or probably not. I don't imagine
I
you have the opportunity to look too far ahead.
I haven't yet. I do plan on it this week.
Right, right. Okay. Let me just see if there's any questions. I don't think there is. Nope. Okay. All right. Um, Maybe what I will do, just while we got a couple of minutes, I'll just I'll open a file here and we can take a peek at it. Right. Yeah, this is a project we did a couple of years ago. And this was a, I'm just going to show you the different layers we do. This was part of our base plan. We had a drone survey done. So we had topographic info. I'm not sure. I had a better one than that. We'll just see if it's available. Yeah, too many files. Okay. Well, that is the base plan, although it's not what we would normally do. Normally, I would have the contour sitting on top of the ground here. But this was a waterfront home, and it's a couple acres going back to the road here, but it has a shared driveway. And clients didn't really want to do anything except for the about half of the property here towards the front. So what we did is we the first thing we do after our sector compass is we do a water layer. So our clients had a home right here, and we identified different roof areas, and we're using metric here. Just a lot easier for calculations. And they also had a workshop with some metal roofing. So it was metal roofing all around, and a really good opportunity to grab some water for use within the landscape. They had their water comes from a community system, and they often get water restrictions, especially in this kind of weather pattern. We're really hot the last week or so where I live, but so they wanted to get a certain amount of resilience when it came to water. So collecting off the roof and storing it seemed like an obvious idea. And we put together 3 different calculations here. So we have 12,000 gallons of storage. We have 15,000 of storage, and then we have 15 here with the shop and the house. And that's where I would have leaned towards. Then we have these usage. No, I won't get too far into this stuff, but we figure out, much like all of you did in lesson 5, we figure out the impervious surface areas and their coefficient factors and the potential collection based on annual average rainfall. And then we break that up into month by month, the rainfall, and then what each month potentially could collect. And then we drop in our usage. So we're projecting the usage. We're not sure about it. But we're sure, as in we know we're going to basically apply an inch of water on the landscape through the growing season, and at the beginning of the growing season, and at the end it won't be as much. So that is how we figure out basically how much water we may need to supplement. So in this top example, we've got to supplement 26,000 liters. And you can see we get as good as 8,000 down at the bottom here. So 8,000 liters is basically, 2,000 gallons. It's not that much. So this was a great, and we're still allowing a lot of overflow during the winter months, because that is inherently the challenge here. We're collecting in the winter primarily, storing it, and then applying it during the summer. So we came up with a plan where we had a pump chamber that would collect, we'd be filtering and collect in this small cistern, which is right up here. It's quite small. I think it was 500 gallon. And then it pumps over into this main storage system. And then this storage system is where we pump from and send it off into the landscape. Now, if this, there's a couple of things we do here. We also would have makeup water. So if we ran out of rainwater, we could start filling it with the community water so that the if we wanted to use this pumping system. Now, on this particular job, we have the ability to turn the system on and off. So we can actually just switch right to the community system and bypass all of this if we wanted to. So there's some redundancy built into this, but that's basically what we're planning here: capture and reuse. So, you know, by calculating this, we know if we went with 12,000 or 15,000, you know, what the gain would be. And that's the tricky part with rainwater, is knowing what the magic number is. How much do we have to collect to be completely sovereign with our water? And that's, again, based on these estimated usage, right? Which may or may not be completely accurate, but they are pretty close. So that was, that's our water layer. So that got revised. And I don't know if I have a revised version here. Yeah. They did, our clients decided not to collect off the house, to collect off the workshop only. And they went with 12,000 gallons of collection. And they're putting it behind a building and putting a roof over it. So I'm not sure if that happened or not. We definitely installed the soft landscape and all the irrigation for them, but they were kind of questioning what they were going to do here. But they wanted to put a greenhouse and have the rainwater tanks behind the greenhouse, which is not a bad idea at all. But the next step, and I just got a couple minutes left here, so I won't go through all of this, but the next step is our access layer. So the water sort of is that driving force in the landscape, and we want to optimize that. So then we basically work around the water layer and integrate. And in this case, there's not a lot going on. There was some buildings here, some impervious, some paving. Well, originally this was just going to be gravel and a little infiltration swale, but it ended up being a permeable parking area, which I might have a picture of. There it is. So this is the type of material. It's like a big grid that you hydro seed afterwards. So you don't see the cores here unless they wear out. And so all the water coming onto here would be percolated down. Now, to me, that's silly. It's very expensive. So we could have basically done had a very similar result with this lower cost approach. But that's personal choice, right? So, and we're going to do a passive solar greenhouse, which I absolutely love. And I don't know if any of you know much about those, but they're a greenhouse that has primary glazing on the south side, and then all the roof and the three other walls are heavily insulated. So this is a really good greenhouse in terms of energy efficiency. And yeah, I just love the whole concept of these. I gotta um, definitely want to have one on my homestead one day. So that was the idea here, and just a little seating area and a raised planting area, which we didn't do the raised planting area. We ended up with plantings that were at grade. So, we present our ideas and then these get modified based on our clients' feedback. But maybe what I'll do is just sort of pause where we're at with this. We can look at this a little bit later with the next assignment, next Q&A Zoom. But yeah, if there is anything anybody would like to ask about today, I'm happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, we will thank you for being here and call it a day. Okay, so it looks like we're all good. Well, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much for attending today. And I hope the lesson number 7 is a little bit clearer. When we get into the next Q&A, you'll probably find that that is a bit trickier, but we'll have an hour to sort of run through that and help you out. So I hope to see you both next at the next meeting. And thanks very much for being here. So you take care and
Thank you,
have,
Jamie.
yeah, you take care and have a great week.
You too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.